Let's begin this video, which is a response to, or a follow-up video to the one that I posted the other day about Israel being a light unto the nations. Let's begin with a quote, and the quote is, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way, right? There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. What does it mean? It really just means that you have to be the peace, right? It's just like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, but you could also say be the peace that you want to see in the world. When you become a person of peace, you will naturally share that peace with those around you. There's also another great saying, which is charity begins at home. And in this case, charity really has the meaning of unconditional love. That's true charity, is unconditional love. So unconditional love or charity begins with yourself, right? You've got to be charitable to yourself. Being charitable to yourself means knowing your infinite worth and knowing that you are a being of infinite worth. If you really are strong in that, then you will also see others in the same way, right? And it will become not only your reality, but the reality more and more of the people around you. And say everyone is doing that, then it's going to be a whole lot of fun, you know. It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more joyful. We all know this is true. You know, when someone is negative, it tends to bring everyone down, and when someone is positive and is happy and smiling and joyful and cheerful, it tends to raise the vibration, tends to uplift people. If anything, that's what I was getting at with my video about Israel the other day. I was not really denigrating Israel. What I was saying was, I love Israel. You know, I think Israel, for the most part, is an amazing country and people. And I'm Jewish as well, so I'm not putting down my own people. I would never do that. I just, I also don't play favorites. The Arabs, the Palestinians, they're also my people, right? They're also my brethren, equally so. And I wouldn't let any kind of ethnicity or religion trump that. That our common humanity has to be the first thing, right? And the oneness that we share is really the first and foremost thing. Everything else comes after that. So anyone that sees my video as putting down Israel would be mistaken. If anything, I was saying, Israel, hey brother, we can do better, because this situation now seems to be out of hand. And I was not in the same place that I am now when October 7th, 2023, when this started. I also understood that Israel had to do something about that attack. It couldn't just let that go. It had to take some kind of response, and it had to try to get the hostages back, which it did, right? But when we're at the point now where there's several thousand Israeli casualties, and there's like 42 to 45,000 Palestinian casualties, a lot of them women and children, then I think we have to ask ourselves, is this really, and also Hamas has not been eliminated, and now Israel is at war with Hezbollah, and there's a danger of Iran now getting into the fray. Iran is already in it because Hamas and Hezbollah, as I understand it, are proxies of the Iranian government. But I think really the deeper thing that I'm trying to get at here is changing, becoming a person of peace ourselves, right? That's really what it comes down to. And it's up to each individual to do that themselves, right? No one can do that for you. And you can make external changes, but the external changes do not amount to being a person of peace, right? I can make peace with others, right? But for it to be a true and lasting peace, I really have to be a person of peace. I really have to be in that vibration of, and I would say love, peace and love, right? John Lennon once said, anyone that thinks that peace and love were just a thing of the 60s and were just a fad is wrong. They're eternal. Peace and love is an eternal thing that we're talking about here, right? And the problem with why the peace does not stick, I would say, is that we don't really love our neighbors, right? We make some kind of peace, but it's just, we haven't really, really haven't gone deep into our own suffering and our own lack of peacefulness, and work through our anger and all of our other things inside of ourselves. So, I mean, what I'm getting at here is a very big thing. It's not like, and I don't expect Israel or anyone to be fully there, So I wasn't really putting down Israel. I think Israel is doing what it feels it needs to do in a very difficult situation. It's very difficult and a very complicated situation. And I think, for the most part, Israel, I'm sure, is making mistakes and so on. But I would not say that Israel is the oppressor. And I would not say that Israel is horrible or is, people compare Israel to the Nazis, right? That's not a good analogy. Let's drop that analogy. And I wouldn't say that there's, that I would leave the anti-Semitic stuff out of this as well, because I'm not getting at, what I'm saying is not anti-Semitic. What I'm saying is, once again, is I believe that Israel and the Jewish people can do better. But like any people, it's not up to any one. This is a collective thing, right? And no, like, the Israelis have the government that they chose. Not everyone has been happy with Netanyahu. I think his approval rating has gone up from what I've read since he started this thing with Hezbollah, because now Israel sees him as stronger. And remember that October 7th, he took a lot of flack for October 7th. What happened there, because that was a big lapse on the part of the Israeli military that even happened, and it's hard to believe it even happened. And so there were conspiracy theories, there were things that were flying, if you remember, back when it started, like, how did that even happen, and how did Netanyahu's government, they were to blame for what happened on October 7th. So in the last couple of days, I've read some interesting comments from people, some of which were thinking that I was putting down Israel, and I really am not. I really am not. I'm just saying that some of the positive things I would say, that I think that Israel can do, which it's already doing, but it can more actively promote peace, and it could more actively do things against its own, to tell its own citizenry that hatred and mistreatment of Palestinians is not okay, right? And the rhetoric is not okay, and the anger and the vengeful attacks are not okay. And it's that's one thing, right? Another thing is I think Israelis could do more, and they have done, right? There have been Arabs and Jews, Palestinians and Jews coming together to create like music and art, and I would like to see more of that. I think the festival that was happening in Israel on October 7th, when this happened, there could be more festivals like that, and there could be more festivals that everyone is invited to, like Arabs, Jews, and so on. Palestinians, that bringing people together in a peaceful way, and maybe coming together, with music and the arts, and that's a great way to bring people together, right? There could be more documentary films, which there have been, but more documentary films, or just films, period, that also bring people together, right? I think film is one of the most powerful mediums to do, to create change. So these are some of the things. The other thing I want to say, so I have a friend who wrote to me and saw my video, the first video, and he said he thought I was really putting Israel down, and he said, you're not welcome at my place anymore if you don't take that video down. And he was shocked at my video. I'm a little bit shocked about what he said there, because I tried to say to him, I'm not really putting Israel down. I'm just saying I think we can do better, and I think there are ways that we can do better in this situation. Another thing Israel could do is really to discipline its military when they do things that are mistreatment of prisoners and so on, and I don't think I mean I understand that terror tactics, or let's say what's the word, torture is often used by militaries, right, to extract information from military prisoners, and I understand that does work, right? But there might be a place for that. I don't know, who am I to say? But I think mistreatment of prisoners in general, and degradation of others, is something that the Israeli government could come down harder on, and just have more control of that if they can, right, if possible. Anyway, what I said to my friend was, I think I did take a balanced and nuanced view of the situation in my first video. I don't think that what I said was putting down Israel. I think that the solution is ultimately to stop seeing the enemy as incapable of coming around. There's that saying that people say, you can't negotiate with terrorists. Well, maybe you can. Maybe that's something we have to question, of whether it's possible to change our outlook and our rhetoric such that we, instead of seeing them as terrorists, we see them as people that are very upset and feeling very angry and vengeful and so on. And maybe that can be changed with some kind of change of attitude on our part. If we come to it by saying, well, they'll never change, that itself is what do you call it? That's a losing proposition, to think, well, they'll never change, so we just got to wipe them out. Well, that's not a long-term. That's not going to work in the long term. Maybe in the short term, right? It might stop them in the short term, but then there's the long term of how do we create a more peaceful society, right? How do we create a more peaceful way of living with our neighbors? I also say this knowing that there are many Israelis that have really tried to create peace with their neighbors, right? There's a lot of Israelis that have not, that have and I lived in Israel, so I saw that there were Israelis with attitudes that put down the Palestinians, right, and the Arabs. It happens on both sides, right? They don't think highly enough of each other, let's say, right? And that's part of the problem. The Palestinians are schooled to think of Israelis as the oppressor from a very early age, and the Israelis as well are they don't, apparently many of them think very highly of the Palestinians or Arabs in general, and that's part of the problem, right? is to overcome that conditioning. Terrorism happens on both sides. Terror tactics have been happening on both sides. It's not just suicide bombers, but the Israeli government also does things that are you could label terror. I think overall, though, Israel has done its part to try to minimize civilian casualties. It has, communicated to the Palestinians before they bombed, but again, when you look at the number of casualties there have been, it seems excessive. No, I'm not done yet, but I just need a little more time. Just a little more time, okay, bud? I know, bud. I'll be done soon. Let me just finish this, okay? Give me a little time, bud, okay? Come back in 5 minutes, okay? Hey, bud. Mommy.
No, she's not up.
Okay.
She's in the kitchen.
Let me just finish this, alright, bud? I'm almost done here. I think ultimately, what I said to my friend was, this is, peace is really an inside job. Becoming a peaceful person is something that each person has to choose for themselves. I do believe that might take them away from warfare and arms and defense completely, but maybe not. And the Bhagavad Gita brings in the idea of a just war, right? The war against injustice. I'm not sure that Israel has completely exhausted the peace negotiations, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, it's a little different because, first of all, there's no women and children involved in the warfare, but also they did exhaust all possibilities of making peace in the Gita, whereas in this case, in this scenario that we're in right now, I don't believe that Israel really has exhausted every possibility of creating peace with its neighbors. But I understand it's a very difficult and challenging situation. I think Israel has the hardest job in the world in terms of what it's faced with. So don't get me wrong about that. But let's talk about one last thing. So I looked up Light of the Nations, Light unto the Nations, and there's a Wikipedia article. So let's just go through this a little bit. Light unto the Nations. Light unto the Nations, or Lagoyim, or Light of the Nations, Light of all nations, Light for all nations, this could be translated different ways, is a term originated from the prophet Isaiah, which is understood by some to express the universal designation of the Israelites as mentors for spiritual and moral guidance for the entire world. So this is from Prophet Isaiah in the prophets, right? In the Old Testament. It's also called the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh.
Mommy's sleeping.
All right, bud. Let me just finish this, bud. Okay, I'm almost done, bud.
Dad, where's my
The term
teddy
originated from verses in the
bear?
book.
Where's my
Hey,
teddy
bud.
bear?
Let me just finish this, okay,
Where's
bud?
my
Please.
teddy bear?
I don't know where it is, bud. Why don't you go look for it?
It's not in
Oops.
the room.
Let me just finish this video, bud.
It's not even down there.
The term originated from verses in the book of Isaiah. So here are the verses. In chapter 42, verse 6, I, the Lord, have called unto you in righteousness and taken hold of your hand and submitted you as the people's covenant, as a light unto the nations. So that's 42:6 Isaiah. And then 49:6 Isaiah. Yeah, he saith, it is too light a thing for you to be my servant, to establish the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the scions of Israel. And I shall submit you as a light unto the nations, to be my salvation until the end of the earth. So it keeps talking about my servant, right? And I understand, we'll get to that in a moment, why this could be understood to be Jesus, right? Not Israel. All right, and then verse 63, and unto your light nations shall walk, and kings unto the brightness of your rising. So that's Isaiah chapter 60, verse 3. In the light of these instances, Rashi, who was a famous commentator on the Torah, Rashi said he interpreted nations as referring to the tribes of Israel and not to the Gentiles. That means in the first, I, the Lord, have called unto you in righteousness, and have taken hold of your hand, and submitted you as the people's covenant, as a light unto the nations. So the nations there for Rashi was the tribes of Israel and not the Gentiles. Goyim is generally, the word goy is generally translated as Gentile, meaning a non-Jewish person. That's where you get that old, probably, Jewish stand-up, ladies and gentlemen. All right. In Christianity, Jesus is held to have, in Christianity, Jesus is held to have fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah with the spread of Christianity around the world, bringing the light of divine revelation to the Gentiles. In the Gospel of Luke, Simeon is a devout old Jewish man to whom God has revealed that he would not die before seeing the Messiah. Upon seeing the infant Jesus in the temple, Simeon takes this promise to have been fulfilled. His words, subsequently known as the Nunc Dimittis, identify Jesus with the light of the nations from Isaiah. Simeon says, "Master, now you are dismissing your servant in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people Israel." And that's Luke chapter 2, 29 to 32. In the Acts of the Apostles, Paul the Apostle draws on the prophecy of Isaiah in his preaching, announcing Jesus as Messiah. This is in Acts chapter 13 and Acts chapter 26. This has been related to Jesus' identification of himself with the light of the world in John's Gospel, saying, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." And that's John chapter 8. In modern usage, so in other words, just to summarize that before we go on, you have this idea of Jesus fulfilling this prophecy of Isaiah, just like Jesus is supposed to have fulfilled many things that are in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. Jesus in John is called the light of the world. Obviously, it seems to suggest, the gospel seems to suggest, that the Jews did not accept Jesus, and that Jesus's teaching was then spread to the Gentiles, and this would make sense in that regard, right? That Jesus then would be, he's the light of the world, he's the light unto the nations, he's bringing the light. One thing I wanted to say, in seeing Israel as the light of the nations, I would include the United States in that as well. And I think that the United States and Israel together have a certain role to play in that regard. On the other hand, I would say that all of this goes beyond religion, and it really just comes down to basic fundamental kindness, which is not a Jewish or Christian or anything. I think it's a value, it's a spiritual principle that goes beyond religion, and no religion can make claim to it. And I don't think, so the idea of Jesus fulfilling all this is wonderful, and maybe it's true, but I don't necessarily think you need to be Christian to understand this and to follow this. Modern usage: from the commencement of the era of the national revival of the Jewish people in the 19th, 20th century, various Jewish philosophers began to see in the national revival a chance to fulfill the prophet's vision of a light unto the nations. One example that may give an insight into the term's meaning is the one of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. He was a very famous rabbi. One of the chief leaders of the religious Zionist movement saw in the aspiration of the people of Israel to be a light unto of the nations a noble part of its designation. So Rabbi Kook understood that this idea that Israel was to be the light to the nations. Upon his return from Thailand on a volunteer service trip with the American Jewish World Service, Rabbi David Wolpe, he's also another famous modern rabbi, said to his congregation at Sinai Temple, "We don't sufficiently think about the fact that because the idea is that you're supposed to be an or lagoyim, meaning a light to the nations, that is a light to the nations, that you can't do it if you never do anything among the nations. If you only have your light on at home, nobody else sees it. Nowhere in any Jewish scripture that I'm aware of will you see Jews must only help other Jews. It doesn't exist. Some Jews will tell you that, but Judaism doesn't tell you that." In other words, the Jews have to help others, right? Not just themselves. In February 2018, President Donald Trump referred to the United States as a light to all nations as the Christian national at the Christian National Prayer Breakfast. And I would agree, with that statement. I don't think that Donald Trump actually wrote that. I think someone else probably wrote it for him. But I think that idea is true for the United States as well. The United States has a role to play in being that light, right? Being the guiding, bringing certain spiritual and ethical principles more to the fore in the world. the state of Israel as a light unto the nations. In his writings and speeches, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, 1886 to 1973, emphasized his vision of the state of Israel as a moral and social beacon to the whole world, and by that, in his view, it shall implement the vision of the prophets. The selection of the menorah as the emblem of Israel was derived from the image of the state of Israel as a light unto the nations. Israel's vision of light unto the nations was reflected in the words of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in his address at the 2010 Herzliya conference, and this is what Netanyahu said. Wait a second, bud.
Sounds like someone walking on the stairs, but whenever I check, there's no one.
No, there's no one there, bud.
No, but I hear someone stomping on the stairs.
I wonder who that is.
That's not even on the stairs.
Yeah, bud. So Netanyahu said, "You are dealing with our people's fate because it is clear today that the fate of the Jewish people is the fate of the Jewish state. There is no demographic or practical existence for the Jewish people without a Jewish state. This doesn't mean that the Jewish state does not face tremendous challenges, but our existence, our future is here. The greatest change that came with the establishment of the Jewish state was that Jews became more than just a collection of individuals, communities, and fragments of communities. They became a sovereign collective in their own territory. Our ability as a collective to determine our own destiny is what grants us the tools to shape our future, no longer as a ruled people defeated and persecuted, but as a proud people with a magnificent country and one which always aspires to serve as light unto the nations." It's a beautiful sentiment that he expressed. I think Netanyahu has a very difficult job himself. I think he's probably taken a lot of flack that he did not really deserve. Has he always done the right thing? I'm sure not. I'm sure he's made some share of mistakes. It just came out that Biden actually called him a bad guy. Behind closed doors, Biden called Netanyahu a bad guy and that son of a bitch. And I'm sure Biden didn't want that to get out, and he probably didn't want Netanyahu to know that he said that. But I think he also said it to his face. He cursed him out at one point recently. Benjamin Netanyahu, in his 2017 UN speech, quoted the book of Isaiah again, that the state of Israel is a light unto the nations, bringing salvation to the ends of the earth. So, I know that there are Christians out there who will say, well, Jesus really was the light unto the nations. Israel is not that until they accept Christ, right? Until the Jewish people accepts Christ, they cannot be that. That could be. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't know. I'm just saying that I think it could be both, right? I think first of all, Jesus came from the Jewish people, so let's not forget that. And who's to say that Israel has not been trying to do that? I think they have. I think they have been trying to be the light unto the nations, and I think in a big way they have succeeded in that. If anything, my first video was just to say that I think we need to continue that to be that, and not to let ourselves be stoop to lower levels, right? But to truly be that beacon of light, and to be that requires an inner strength of each person, right? So with that, I'm gonna. All right, bud. So with that, I'm gonna sign off, and I would love to hear your comments. It was a very long video. Thank you for listening, if you did, and would love to hear your thoughts. No answers, only questions, as always. But hopefully, we get a little further along as we talk about these things and discuss them, and maybe just become aware of the issues at hand. And I'll say one last thing, which is that I'm sure there are many Christians and pastors and people in the Christian community who are hoping that Israel will accept Christ. And I don't see that as necessarily happening on a mass level. Certainly, some Israelis have, right? Some Jews have. But I think it really comes down to universal spiritual principles, and you don't have to bring religion or Jesus even into this necessarily. I think Israel can be a light unto the nations by just following the golden rule and loving thy neighbor as thyself, and that's right there in Leviticus. You know, it's in the Hebrew Bible. So a lot more to say about all this, but I'll leave it at that. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for finding the way to peace, being the peace that you are, the love and the joy and the peace. See you soon. Salam and shalom.